The Washington Capitals were embarrassed in this year's playoffs, rocking one of the worst goal differentials in NHL playoff history. And their face of the franchise, Alex Ovechkin, was held scoreless throughout the entire series for the first time in his career. Ovi is known as one of the greatest goal scorers in NHL history and can actually become the greatest as early as this upcoming season. But Ovi has also been known for his iconic equipment that some may deem strange upon first glance. There used to be two main components to the Great Eight's equipment that truly helped separate Ovi from the rest. The first being his bright yellow laces on his skates, and the most infamous being his tinted visor. If you've played the NHL video game franchise, you'd know just how beloved the tinted visor is amongst the community. They practically begged EA to have the feature back into the game, and this is mainly due to the look being both fun to wear and the impact Ovechkin had in helping stylize it. Ovi himself mentioned that he actually got the inspiration for said look from Theo Fleury. When Fleury was able to meet up with Ovechkin back in 2019, he'd state the following, quote, "I'm looking at him and he's got yellow laces and a tinted visor. I go, where'd you get that idea? And he says, from you." Nowadays, Ovi's only seen rocking the yellow laces, and that's mainly thanks to Martin Brodeur, who back in 2006 got the league to ban the visors after complaining that it was hard for him and other netminders to track the player's eyes, preventing them from being able to make timely saves. And although the league did get rid of them for a brief period of time, some current NHLers such as William Nylander and David Perron have been seen rocking a tinted visor. There have been some interesting style choices that numerous players have worn throughout NHL history, but some have been able to stand out amongst the rest. Take this, for example. These are the shin pads of defenseman Craig Ludwig, who is known for being one of the best shot-blocking defensemen during his time in the league. Unfortunately, blocked shots weren't a tracked statistic, so trying to see how effective he truly was can only be viewed via older highlights. But after seeing how massive his equipment was, it's safe to say he definitely had an upper hand. Ludwig wore those pads while playing at the University of North Dakota, and would wear these same pads until he retired in 1999. It's not uncommon to hear about players wearing old gear that holds sentimental value throughout their entire career. Similar to Craig, Sidney Crosby infamously donned the same exact cup he's used since juniors, and Islanders great Butch Goring would infamously rock this. Butch Goring's helmet is one of the most popular examples that are used when discussing the topic of strange looking equipment, and the many stories that come with it are extremely fun to tell. Butch's father would gift him the helmet in 1961 when he was 12 years old. The snap helmet stood out amongst the rest, mainly due to how it looked. They were a big item at that point in time, Butch would state. They didn't offer a lot of protection, but they were lucky for me. I was very fortunate to stay healthy in my career. The helmet had two spaces on his head and holes on the top of it, and over the years, it'd see its fair share of makeovers. Goring would mention that, quote, "Originally, the helmets were painted purple and gold in LA. When I went to the Islanders, we had them painted different colors. In Boston, different colors. And even when I had a little comeback in Edmonton, we painted them different colors." Goring said them, as he actually wore two of the same helmet, one for home games and one for road games. One of the helmets were so beat up that it actually required a last-minute tape job from equipment manager Jim Picard. Goring recalled how they didn't have paint, so Picard had to resort to blue duct tape to cover up the dents. Sadly, I couldn't find any evidence of the taped up helmet being used in a game, or at all, really. But as for the questionable design of the helmet, that didn't seem to matter to Butch. He'd state, quote, "I didn't wear it for protection. For me, it was like I didn't know any other way to play hockey other than with my helmet. I grew up in an era where helmets were mandatory as a kid, and it just didn't make any sense to take it off because it wasn't anything I needed to get rid of." Unlike other athletes who wear the same equipment due to superstitions, Goring never felt that way. But if it works, and he'd admit that although he did have some items that he kept simply for comfort purposes, none of them were quite like his helmet. Like other professional athletes, NHL stars can agree to a partnership with a particular brand. Recently, we've seen tons of players, including Connor McDavid, partner with sports betting companies, and most times, they'll receive a perk in doing so. In the NBA, numerous stars would get signature sneakers, and in 1995, an NHL player would promote a sneaker that was also designed to be an ice skate. Pay close attention to this next clip.
Gretzky's got Hall on it, taken away by Sergei Fedorov. Wayne Gretzky had what he thought was a 2-on-1. Watch him jump ahead of Fedorov. And then Sergei put it into overdrive.
If you notice, that was Sergei Fedorov taking on Wayne Gretzky in what looked to be a pair of Nikes. That's because Nike would pick Fedorov to promote their newest design, the Nike Zoom Airs. In that same year, Nike would acquire Bauer, but decided to make their own brand called Nike Hockey. Nike wanted to change itself from just being a sneaker company and into a global sports brand, and wanted to venture into the realm of hockey. They deemed Fedorov the perfect spokesperson due to a handful of reasons. Nike's head of global advertising stated that Fedorov, quote, at the time was the greatest player in his day, and the fact that he was Russian with all the history of the Canada Cup and the 1980 Olympics, the thought was that he'd be a great asset. Part of the deal allowed Sergei to get his own signature shoe called the Nike Air Street Express, which were shoes designed for, well, street hockey, but Nike also wanted him to rep the Zoom Airs on NHL ice. The design itself was hit or miss, with some loving the look while others hated it, mainly due to the skates being white, a concept that was only done a few times before, most notably with the California Golden Seals back in the 1970s. However, what many don't know is that it was Fedorov himself who actually helped design the skates. He was passionate about working with Nike, but admitted it was hard at times, stating, quote, it's hard to do. I barely spoke English. It's hard to imagine anything like that. You're so busy with other things like playing and making sure you don't get checked hard, you're pretty occupied. The partnership between both sides ended mutually in 1999 once Fedorov's contract expired. And although he later stated that he never really felt comfortable wearing the skates, he believes that had the company given the idea a second chance, that perhaps it would have allowed Nike Hockey to grow bigger as a brand. While we're on the topic of skates, Bruins defenseman Dennis Seidenberg was notorious for rocking one of the craziest looking skate designs known as T-Blades. Other NHLers such as Johan Hecht, Marcel Gock, and Christian Ehrhoff donned the blades, but Seidenberg's remembered the most when reminiscing on the design. The blade was invented by German company T-Blade GmbH and were intended to reduce the constant need to sharpen your blade. The goal was also to allow for a lighter feel, increased maneuverability, and better gliding. Seidenberg was close to the inventor of the product and decided to wear them as they were popular when he was growing up. He would be interviewed on his overall thoughts on the blade, and what he states is intriguing.
They look kind of like rollerblades, like you can see. I don't know, again, they don't look pretty, but I just like the way they feel. They're a lot louder, and I don't know what it has to do with. I mean, there's different plastic and they're hollow inside, so maybe that's what carries the sound when I'm on the ice. I don't know. The advantage, they say, is the glide. You can glide better. The reason I can't explain it to you. They test all that stuff. And the other thing is that you can do tighter turns.
He does mention how he liked the way they cut and glide on the ice, but said how they were loud, clunky, and he didn't like the overall look of the design. The design also seemed to be a debate amongst the fans, with the hollow bottoms being the main standout. Seidenberg would eventually move on from wearing the blades, and once he retired in 2018, we've yet to see another NHLer rep them, which may also be the reason why the T-Blades legacy will forever be attached to Seidenberg. Before there was Henrik Lundqvist, there was Dan Blackburn. Blackburn was a promising goaltender coming out of the WHL, who the Rangers valued heavily, so much so that they'd select him 10th overall back in 2001. They needed a netminder who could fill in for Mike Richter, the longtime Rangers netminder, who just suffered a head injury. Blackburn would make his debut in 2002, filling in for Mike, where he'd immediately pick up a heavy workload. Playing in 17 games for New York, he began to express concern, knowing the workload would burn him out. And that's exactly what it did. He'd struggle, but returned for the following season. However, what happened next was truly disheartening. Just before training camp, he'd suffer a nerve injury to his left shoulder due to a freak accident in the weight room. This in turn prevented him from being able to use his gloved side hand. Dan didn't want to quit, however, so he decided to compensate, opting to replace his glove with the second blocker. This was never seen before and made Blackburn stick out like a sore thumb. Many, including, yes, myself, have foolishly judged the look without researching the context or reasoning behind it. But when you want something bad enough, you'll do almost anything to obtain it, and Dan was determined to remain in the league. Unfortunately, his attempt to do so didn't go as planned, as the injury he sustained back in the 03-04 season would be too much for him, causing him to eventually retire in 2005. Blackburn's story is proof to never judge a book by its cover, and just because something is deemed weird or strange challenge, it doesn't make it a negative. Injuries are unfortunate and unprecedented, but it's how you respond to one that counts. Blackburn chose to not let the injury hold him down and was able to adapt and overcome by any means necessary. And even if the damage done would eventually end his career, he was still able to make an impact, to become an inspiration, and to stand out amongst the rest, cementing himself in NHL history.